Greetings, booktubers, and welcome to Sunday Comics. Greetings, booktubers. Welcome back to Grammaticus Books. Welcome to a long overdue Sunday Comics edition of Grammaticus Books. And today we are doing a Savage Conan Extravaganza. A Savage Conan Extravaganza because today we're talking about Savage Sword of Conan with Conan the Barbarian and Savage Tales, which also features Conan the Barbarian. This is all part of Cimmerian September, a reading event created by Michael K. Vaughan over in his fantastic channel, where you read Conan stories or any other Robert E. Howard stories all during the month of September. I will link his fantastic channel down in the description below. Encourage you to go check it out. So we're going to go over 3 Savage Swords of Conan that I found a little while ago out in the wild in a vintage toy store of all places in downtown Columbus. These fill in a couple holes in my collection here of Savage Swords. And we're going to talk here in a little more depth about this Savage Tales here from 1974, which also features Conan the Barbarian. Savage Tales was the first fanzine to feature Conan in this format, in a black and white fanzine magazine format, and it started back in 1974. I think it had a total of 5 issues before Savage Tales folded, and then it was recreated a number of years later as a Savage Sword of Conan, which we've got over here. And we're going to spend a little more time on this one. I have never seen, up until this one right here, I've never found a Savage Tales out in the wild. You can get them on eBay. You see them up on eBay. Savage Tales #1, since it is the first appearance of Conan in a fanzine magazine, is extraordinarily expensive. It's going to cost you $200 or more to pick that one up. But after that, the subsequent issues here are not that pricey. This one cost me $20. But there's a major flaw in this magazine here of Savage Tales issue #3. And I'll show it to you guys when we get to this one, which we'll go into in a little more detail. So let's get into it. Let's get into the Savage Conan Extravaganza here to kick off Cimmerian September with Savage Sword of Conan #30, The Wings of Terror, which is a conversion, or I should say an adaptation by Roy Thomas of the Robert E. Howard story, The Scarlett Citadel. Scarlett Citadel is an original story by Robert E. Howard. It's one of his better stories. It was taken up pretty much in its entirety and dropped into the book, the full-length story, Hour of the Dragon, also known as Conan the Conqueror. Robert E. Howard's only full-length novel. He lifted this story out of there and just inserted it en toto into that book, The Hour of the Dragon. But this is the short story here, The Scarlet Citadel with Conan the Barbarian. It's a great story. You've got Conan here riding a pterodactyl to his final confrontation with the Wizard of the Scarlet Citadel, who is South Atlanta, who you can see here in the background, staring at Conan as he's coming to bring him his doom. Now, this one's a little unusual, though, because it was illustrated, or I should say the pencils were done by Frank Bruner. Mostly these pencils were done by Big John Buscema and typically inked by either Tony DeZuniga or Ernie Chan. The inker in here is not credited, but here you get the intro page here with Frank Bruner doing the pencils. And then it goes to a really nice splash page, which is a battle with King Conan. He's King Conan at this point. His nation has been invaded, and he's fending off the invaders unsuccessfully at the start of the novel, or the short story, I should say. And Frank Bruner just does a really nice job illustrating this here in Savage Sword #30 from June of 1978. And again, really nice work here on that full-length feature here of The Scarlet Citadel by Frank Bruner, with a really nice adaptation by Roy Thomas. And that's Savage Sword #30. The other one that I found to fill in a couple holes in my collection is this one, #31. This one's pretty beat up. Fortunately, I have another copy I wasn't aware of. I went to file this one, and I've got a nicer copy, but this will make a good reading copy. And this is issue number 31 from July of 1978. and that's a Howard Chaykin cover for Friends of the Flame Knife. And this is a conversion of the Robert E. Howard story. Actually, it's not a Robert E. Howard story. Well, it sort of is. I'll go into the history of this. But the Flame Knife was actually an L. Sprague de Camp story that he took from Robert E. Howard. Robert E. Howard wrote a story called The Three-Bladed Doom, which was for his desert adventurer El Borak, who was sort of a modern adventurer set in the 1930s in Afghanistan, having all these desert adventures. And he wrote Three-Bladed Doom, and it never got published. L. Sprague de Camp finds the unpublished manuscript, and he converts it over into the Flame Knife Conan story by just changing the names of the characters and adding in a supernatural element. And it's a pretty decent story, actually. And its conversion and adaptation here by Roy Thomas is really nice. And this one actually is penciled by Big John Buscema, who is, in my opinion, the greatest Conan illustrator to pick up a pencil and illustrate the mythic hero of sword and sorcery himself. And the inks are by Tony DeZuniga, who I really actually like Tony's inking. Although a lot of people tend to prefer Ernie Chan. And I think Ernie Chan has a tendency to put in a little too much ink. He makes the panels a little too dark. Whereas Tony DeZuniga kind of brings them out a little bit better. And just look at that fantastic panel there with those pencils by Big John Buscema. He really knew how to portray Conan. Just great stuff here with the Flame Knife by L. Sprague de Camp, based off of the manuscript Three-Bladed Doom by Robert E. Howard. And you get the full story in here. And these fanzine magazines here, Savage Sword of Conan, they were fantastic. You could get a great story in there. You had the larger format where you could get these just fantastic establishing shots here by a master of comic book art, John Buscema. People just don't do stuff like this anymore. I don't think there's a lot of people who are illustrating these magazines that really have, I'm not going to say the talent, but they don't have the life experiences and backgrounds to illustrate with this. They don't have the life experiences, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the classical training that these artists got in order to produce the works of this quality. Yes, I'm doing the old man thing here, but I do truly believe that, because you just don't see this quality art anymore out here in the comic book world here in the year 2025, unfortunately. That's my opinion. It may be wrong. If you know somebody out there who is a fantastic artist who can draw like Big John Buscema, and I know I'm taking one of the legendary artists out of the past and then comparing him to, all these modern artists, it's not really that fair of a comparison. But I do feel like he was the greatest out there and that people just don't draw like they used to. And then the last one here is Savage Sword of Conan number 33 with Curse of the Monolith. And this is from September of 1978. And Curse of the Monolith is illustrated by Gene Colan. And Gene Colan, I think, is probably of these three artists on here, he's probably the least talented. That's not to say that he's not talented. He's just not quite up to Frank Bruner's standards, or certainly not up to Big John Buscema's. But he still does a really good job here on Curse of the Monolith. And Curse of the Monolith is it's a L. Sprague de Camp and a Lynn Carter story that they created wholesale out of whole cloth, so to speak. Robert E. Howard never touched it. And it was originally titled Conan and the Cenotaph. And then they changed it to Curse of the Monolith. Curse of the Monolith is a much better story. And even though this is by de Camp and Carter and not by Robert E. Howard, I think it is one of the better stories by L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter. And here you've got Gene Colan, and he does really well. This is really good stuff. I would take it over 95% of anything that's being illustrated today. It's not quite Big John Buscema, but it is pretty dang good. And you get the full story here of Curse of the Monolith. Just excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. If you can come across these Savage Swords out in the wild, a decent price, a fair price for these old Savage Swords is between $10 and $15. I paid $10 a piece for these, which is a reasonable price to pay. If you're paying $20 or more for one of these old Savage Swords that are in like the 20s, 30s, and 40s, that issue of publication, you're probably paying a little too much. But that brings us to our final fanzine here, which is Savage Tales number 3 from February of 1974, the original fanzine to feature Conan the Barbarian. And this has artwork by Barry Windsor Smith. So we've got 4 different fanzines here, and we've got 4 different artists. And this is Barry Windsor Smith, not quite at the height of his powers, but he's not where he's starting off, and he's really rough. When Barry Windsor Smith started illustrating Conan the Barbarian back on Conan number 1, the comic book, the full color comic book, he was pretty much just a Jack Kirby clone. And then he kind of slowly came into his own style and then just developed into this fantastic artist in his own right. And he's not quite at the height of his powers here, illustrating Red Nails. Again, one of the most famous of Robert E. Howard stories, one of the best Robert E. Howard stories out there, Red Nails. And this is part 2 of Red Nails. Part 1 was in Savage Tales number 2. And let me show you just a sample of that. So here's the introduction page for Red Nails with Barry Windsor Smith. And the initial part 1 of it, I think his artwork, Barry Windsor's artwork on part 1 is a little better. On part 2, he was a little under the gun. He was behind on his schedule, which is very much like Barry Windsor Smith. He was always behind on his work. But he later came back to Red Nails, and they had him redo Red Nails for a larger format Marvel comic book that was known as the Marvel Treasure Editions. And they took part 1 and part 2 that were published here originally in Savage Tales in black and white, and then Barry Windsor Smith added on to those, and he colored them in personally. And then those were all published here in this Marvel Treasure Edition, Conan the Barbarian, number 4. And this is the way to go. If you're looking to get Red Nails, when he colored it, it just really brought it out. It made everything pop. And a lot of that detail that kind of gets lost on your eye when he's doing the black and white there in Red Nails and Savage Tales sort of gets blended in together. He can differentiate it all with the different color schemes and the different palettes in order to make the different areas of the panel stand out. And it really just improves this comic book tremendously. Not to mention the fact that you've got this oversized format that just looks spectacular. So if you're looking to get a copy of the graphic novel, Red Nails by Barry Windsor Smith, that is definitely the way to go. By the way, the Flame Knife was originally published by L. Sprague de Camp back in 1955. That's the El Borak story, Three-Bladed Doom, that he converted over into a Conan story. It was published in 1955. They published another version of the Flame Knife in 1981. That's this copy right here. And this copy is fantastic. And the reason this copy is fantastic is because it has interior artwork by Esteban Maroto. Esteban Maroto is one of the best line art drawers that there was back in the 1970s and 1980s. His work is fantastic. And this book, they say here, lavishly illustrated. They are not kidding. This book is lavishly illustrated. Right here on the inside cover, you get that great little line drawing there by Esteban Maroto of Conan. Get a great little rendition of a dagger there. And then just look at this artwork. It's just stupendous. Just wonderful, wonderful stuff. And the book is just filled with this. About every third page, you've got an illustration here by Esteban Maroto. Check out this troop of horsemen riding out from this ancient Hyborian city into the desert, out on their adventure. And it's just terrific stuff. And speaking of Esteban Maroto, this copy here of Savage Tales number 3 has a center page spread by Esteban Maroto that is one of the most beautiful center page spreads, pieces of graphic artwork that I have ever seen. That is not an exaggeration. I'm going to get an overhead camera set up. I'm going to set this down. We're going to open it up, and I'll show you a little bit of the Red Nails, a little bit more of that, and the black and the white. And you can see again why it just really pops more in the color version than it does here in the black and white version. But then we're going to go to that center page spread, and I'm going to show you guys just this fantastic piece of line artwork here by Esteban Maroto. So This is it. We're going to switch over to the overhead camera, and here we go. All right, and here we go with the overhead camera, the very first overhead camera shot here with this device here in Grammaticus Books with Savage Tales of Conan from 1974. And we're going to open it up here. You got this great little insert with Barry Windsor Smith. Just really nice work there by Barry Windsor Smith. And then you've got the introduction to The Lurker from the Catacombs, which is part 2 of Red Nails, the first adaptation of Red Nails, done in a graphic form here by Barry Windsor Smith. And it starts off really nice. And then here you go into the details of the story. Got a really nice close-up here of Valeria, who's his companion during the story of Red Nails. But you can see it gets a little bit his line work and his overuse of mid-shots in the panels, that things start to kind of blend together. And then you can look back on the colorized version that he did later for that large Marvel Treasure Edition, where he puts color into this comic book, and it really makes a lot of these scenes pop out, and it differentiates and brings out the major components on each of these panels on the pages, and really improves it. Not that this is bad. It's Barry Windsor Smith, almost at the height of his powers, but not quite there. You get a nice little panel here of the evil king down here, Tolkamek. Really like how he does hair. Barry Windsor Smith was always really great with his hair. But let's get to that centerpiece by Esteban Maroto and just go into just the magnificent centerpiece here. And there it is, Red Sonja, she-devil of the Turanian steppes. And it is just fabulous. It's absolutely fantastic. It's one of the best centerpieces that I've ever seen. And just take a minute to just sort of soak it all in, and just how beautiful of a piece of artwork this is here in Savage Tales number 3 from 1974. And then once we've absorbed it here as a total panel, then I'm going to go into it. I'll start taking it apart, and we'll see what makes this panel great. We kind of analyze it a little bit, and what are the elements in here that all come together in order to make this panel great. And the first thing that makes this panel great is the foundation. And he lays the foundation right here with this semicircle. He's got a semicircle that lays the foundation for the whole panel here. It curves up on the left, it curves up on the right, and then slopes down in the middle. And the good thing about this curvature, this semicircle foundation, is that it keeps your eye on the page. Is the first thing it does. It keeps your eye coming back here to the center point, and human beings are more attracted to curves than they are to straight lines. Curves are just more aesthetically pleasing to a human eyeball than a straight line. And if you laid just a straight line across here as the foundation for this panel, the other thing that straight line would do is it would tend to have your eye just sort of fall off the page to the left or the right. By having this curve here for the foundation, it keeps your eye on the page and centered in the action for as long as possible. The other thing here about this semicircle is you have the eyes of Red Sonja here, where she's looking in this direction, and then you've got the necromancers up here, and their eyes are all focusing down in this direction as well. So as you're looking at the panel, you come up here, their eyes direct you back down towards the center. Your eyes sweep across the double page spread. You get to Red Sonja, and then her eyes direct you back. And again, this is all designed on purpose by Esteban Maroto in order to keep your eye on this page as long as possible. The other great thing that makes this panel fantastic is then he leaves this open space here in the center. And this open space, it lets it breathe a little bit. It lets this panel breathe, and it also draws your eye to, and it puts into focus Red Sonja, who is absolutely magnificent. So the next element of this panel that makes it great is his use of black, the heavy uses of the black areas. So you have heavier black areas right here, just underneath Red Sonja, and then you have a heavy black area over here on this part of the panel that sort of blocks it in, and then you've got the black of the wings on these winged demons of the abyss here that are underneath and supporting the necromancers, who are the main figures on the left side. So it supports the black here, the black areas. They support Red Sonja. They block in the page over here. And here you've got a wing on the front, the foremost winged demon, that is all light. It's light with just line drawings in here in order to bring out the details, but then right behind it, all the other wings of the other demons are almost solid black, and they rest right underneath the necromancers, and they act upon as the foundation upon which to stand and sit, and it gives them a solid backing, a solid footing for them to rest here within the panel, and sets them up as central figures along with Red Sonja. So you've just got masterful use of the heavy black areas in here, again blocking in and framing everything within this double page spread. Then the other element in here that makes this just an absolute work of genius by Esteban Maroto is all the detail that he incorporates into this panel, into this masterful centerpiece. Take a look at the embellishment on the armor on Red Sonja. It is absolutely fantastic how it's all been detailed out. You have all the linkages between the armor and all the plates resting on each other, how they're all articulated. It's fantastic. Look at her hair. Look at the details on the flowing hair with the individual strands going backwards. It just gives it motion and strength that makes it just pop out and looks wonderful. Take a look at this shield, how he's used lines and blocks of black inks on here to make this shield look like it just has an oily metallic sheen on it. And then you've got the details on the insides of the wings here with the scales of the wings in light relief and then in dark relief, all setting it off. And then finally, take a look at the spearhead over here of this undead warrior where his spear is cracked after Red Sonja has slain him again back to the undead. But look at the spear. It's not just a plain triangle. It has character to it. It has different designs to it. It has all these different intricate little details that he didn't have to put in there, but by putting him in there, it just makes this entire panel that much more interesting. And then that's how his composition comes into play here, with the semicircle foundation, with the blacks, the heavy black inks blocking everything in, with the eyes here of the necromancers looking down to the right, and the eyes of Red Sonja looking to the left, in order to keep your eye on this panel as long as possible so that you'll pick out all these details that he put into it. And it's absolutely wonderful. And then the other aspect of it that makes it just a work of brilliance is the posing. Look at his pose here with Red Sonja. It's not overly exaggerated, but it's graceful, lithe, and it has power all at the same time. Look at the posing of the dead warriors. It looks right. It looks correct. And then look at the arrogance and the hubris and the stances of the necromancers over here. Even though you can't see their faces, their body positioning, their body language just exudes that arrogance and that hubris of these necromancers who are trying to kill Red Sonja. It is absolutely wonderful. And then you've got the winged demons from the abyss leaning in, stretching in here with their desire to just rend her limb from limb. And it makes for a wonderful, wonderful panel. And then finally, that brings you here to the last piece of brilliance by Esteban Maroto that makes this an absolute work of genius. And that is that this whole panel tells a story. In one shot here, without any type of dialogue, any type of editorial comments in it, it tells a story. You've got Red Sonja on the right. Her horse has been felled with arrows and spears in an ambush by undead warriors launched by the necromancers. She has slain all the undead warriors, revenging her horse in the initial part of the ambush, and she's working her way over here to the winged demons from the abyss for that confrontation, which will then lead her in to inevitably kill the necromancers that have set this whole thing up. And in one panel, it just tells this great story. And you've got this gradient of evil going here from the lower level undead monsters here, the low level monsters, to the more dangerous winged demons, and then the necromancers controlling it all. And sort of this gradient of evil set all within this stage and this frame of this story that Esteban Maroto set up with all this fantastic details. And that is why this is one of the best panels, the best double page spreads that I've ever laid my eyes on in any type of a graphic novel anywhere. If you know of another double page spread that you think is fantastic, let me know about it down in the comments section below. And with that, we're going to cut back to the main camera. All right, and that wraps up this edition of Sunday Comics. And with that, I'm going to say take care, be safe, and I'll catch you guys next time.